And welcome to potentially painful. Now we always have fun. Crawford Podcasting Network. I'm down in the blocks with number 45, former Wolverine pivot man Chris Young. He watched it. I watched it. We texted. CY knew this thing was trouble. What? 2 minutes in with the Illini last night for your Wolverines.
Yeah. About 2 minutes in, I was sitting there watching it, and I paused it, and I went and fixed myself a big adult beverage and came back and watched the rest of the debacle because I knew right then that it was not going to be pretty. I was hoping there was going to be a little bit more fight, but I knew what the result was already.
I got some. I'm going to show some forgettable stats. I call them. On the scroll right now. 4 assists is all. 0 for Mike Smith. 7 threes were attempted. Attempted, mind you. 34% shooting. 12 offensive boards for Illinois. And I think overall board differential was like 42-26 or something like that.
Yep, there was 16 difference. Yep.
Forgettable stats. Illinois came to play. We thought, Brad Underwood, kind of stoking the fire with that, taking a shot at Michigan might fire up the Wolverines more than fired up his team. But his team, took the baton and ran with it. I don't know. Iodosumu not playing. I thought, hey, this is looking good to clinch. But, man alive, they got great sub play from a backup point guard. And look out. It was lights out.
Yeah,
early and often.
That's what the old adage is. You got to be careful of a wounded animal, and they were a wounded animal. Their best player wasn't playing, so the rest of the guys stepped up and showed, like, look, Desumu's the heart and soul of our team, but we're all capable players too. We all got recruited to play in the Big Ten, and they came out and played. And the play of Kobe Colburn, man, he wasn't Shaq out there. He ended up with 12 points and 7 rebounds, but he impacted the entire game.
But
every time that Michigan went to the basket, they were looking over their shoulder. Where is he? Is he going to come over to block my shot?
Yeah.
Anytime Hunter Dickinson or Austin Davis tried to go to the basket, all they were worried about is, I got to really try and move this guy. I gotta try and do something because he's an All-American and blah, 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 blah. He was just in everybody's heads. That's all it was. He changed the entire course. Even when he was on the bench, he changed the entire course of the game.
Yeah. Corbello, the backup guy, Andre Corbello. I think he's a freshman, or if not, he's sophomore. He only saw 20 minutes of play. 17 points. He made up for the Iodosumu. Very aggressive player, very a slasher. Underneath the hoop, he wasn't intimidated by the bigs of Michigan. He's squeezing in Trent Frazier, who's been around forever. It seems like.
Yes.
He's out of South Florida. 22 points. He had a terrific game. They just got solid contribution all the way around. I told you about that board advantage, 42-26. Michigan got it, I think, at the 21-18. But we were joking, but then they went on. It was 30. It was 33-22 at halftime. That it was 11-point lead that felt like a 24-point lead. But you know what? We were joking the other day. I don't know if it was you or somebody else. Somebody said, if you stop Livers, Dickinson, and Wagner, you're going to beat them. Like that can't happen.
Yeah.
Good Lord, it happened.
Yeah.
I mean, Isaiah Livers had 7 points. Hunter Dickinson had 6 points. Franz Wagner had 2 points.
Yeah.
2 freaking points. Wow.
But I mean, that's what we were actually. I think it was the two of us that were talking about it.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to stop, Hunter Dickinson and Isaiah Livers? That's fine. You're going to get it from Johnny Brown. You're going to get it from Mike Smith. You're going to get it from Franz Wagner. There's multiple other guys that are more than capable of coming out and putting up 20 to beat you. Well, the problem is when all 6 of your guys don't show up, then what do you do?
Right.
We had literally 1 guy in double figures. I mean, that just doesn't happen. That can't happen on a team that's this good. You can't come out and play that flat against that caliber of team and expect to have any type of success at all. I mean, they weren't in this game. Michigan controlled the opening tip, and that was it. The rest of the game was totally out of their control. They were out hustled. They were out muscled. I mean, every adjective you can think of to describe how poorly they played, you can throw out there because they got beaten every single category.
Yeah, Austin Davis had 9 points on 4 for 4 shooting. I talked about Livers with 7 points. Eli
Mhm.
Brooks had 11. This is Chris. This is just, don't you think, especially with a quick turnaround, Michigan State. This is take a hammer and smash the tape or whatever they used to do
Mhm.
in the old days.
Yep.
That game's in the that's behind us. Get ready
Mhm.
for Michigan State. This is a big test, I think, for this team and in particular Juwan Howard and that staff, because yeah, that Minnesota game, that was a long time ago, and they bounced back from that, but
Mhm.
that game wasn't situated at such a critical time and a rapid fire time when you
Yep.
got the two rival games. You're playing the rival twice,
Yep.
Thursday and Sunday. Thursday's at 7 o'clock on ESPN, and then on Sunday on CBS.
Mhm.
Critical games. Michigan needs to have one of them. There's nothing more that Michigan State wants to do than to keep their rival from winning a Big Ten crown. And yet they don't have the fundamental pressure of making the tournament. I think they're in pretty good shape
Mhm.
as long as they don't embarrass themselves. And maybe if they lose both Michigan games, they're still probably in. And if
They're
they
still probably
grab
in.
one in the Big Ten tournament, they're definitely in. But
Mhm.
I think there's more pressure, to be honest with you, Chris, on Michigan, because they have 3 opportunities to win one game and they're 0 for
Mhm.
1.
Yeah, you're right. And there's nothing that Michigan State would love more than to play spoiler. They want to come out and play tomorrow night the way they played last week. They kind of, took a step back playing against Maryland on Sunday where they lost, and then they came back and fight and clawed and beat Indiana last night. Indiana's not an
Right.
amazing ball club, but they still beat them. They still got that little bit of momentum where Michigan's spending time in the video room today. And I was joking with Jamie Morris earlier on TKA that it's not like the old days when we used to be in video where we'd be getting cussed at and all kinds of fun stuff. I'm sure Juwan doesn't do any of that stuff because that's not how it's done anymore. But I'm sure there was some calling out. I'm sure there was some pointing guys out and like, hey, man, you got to step it up here. This is not acceptable. You have to do this and this and this. And we have to do this as a team. And then you send the guys out of the room. You bring them back in 5 minutes later. And, okay, let's sit down and let's watch Michigan State. Put that game behind us. Put everything behind us. And let's move on. Because that's what you have to do. You have to compartmentalize that type of a game and that type of a loss because you got a huge game coming up tomorrow. And then you got a huge game coming up on Sunday. You can't let that leak over to the first half of the game tomorrow, because if you do, Sparty's going to come out and jump on you, and then you're fighting and clawing trying to get back against a team that has shown they're more than capable of beating a top 10 team.
Yeah, in that Michigan State Indiana game, which I watched after the Michigan debacle, even though I wasn't in the mood to watch basketball, I felt I needed to watch it. And I thought they finished strong. Marcus Bingham showed me something that he might be some type of level contributor against Michigan. He's he's very mobile. And Gabe Brown, that shot, look, when it's on, it's on. Aaron Henry's, their best player. They got enough to beat Michigan. I don't think there's going to be more than a split, but I just don't want to be nervous going into Sunday. I don't want this one tomorrow night. To me, is everything. You're at home. It's senior night, or whatever level that is, without fans.
Yes.
I think it's so critical tomorrow night. I think Michigan's got a lot of pride, and I've been cringing, Chris, looking at text from sources of Michigan sources about Liver's health. I just don't want to get some text or a tweet or something like that Livers is looking dicey for tomorrow night, because you saw him favoring that ankle, and you just never know. You don't, adrenaline's flowing last night. Who knows what today is bringing?
You know what today is? The day before a rivalry game. You know what tomorrow is? The rivalry game.
That's true.
There's no way someone that's been around and played as many games as Liver has that he'll miss tomorrow night without having a broken bone or something really wrong. If he sprained his ankle, he'll be out there. There's no way he's not going to play if it's just a twisted ankle. It's coming up on, the light at the end of the tunnel is getting brighter and brighter. Play tomorrow, rest a couple days, play Sunday, and then you can rest till Thursday or Friday, whenever their first game is in the Big Ten tournament. I don't see him playing or not playing as being an issue. But to go back to your other point, Michigan State is more than capable of beating Michigan. The Michigan team that showed up yesterday against Illinois. The Michigan team that showed up last week and beat Iowa. That Michigan team routs Michigan State tomorrow night. They beat them by 20, without a doubt. But
well,
the
they're
team
12-point favorites too.
Yeah, the team that showed up against Indiana, the Michigan team that showed up against Indiana, that team even beats Michigan State by 10 to 15. Now the team that showed up last night, it's a dogfight. That's a couple point game coming down the stretch, and maybe a referee makes a bad call or something like that. So the guys have got to put that game out of their head. They've got to move forward. Whether Livers is playing or not, that can't matter. You just got to go next man up, and we got to step up, and we got to play better. And I'm expecting a whole lot out of Johnny Brown. He hasn't showed a whole lot in the last week or so.
Last 2 games.
His confidence is gone. And for a shooter, for his confidence to be gone, I don't understand it. He averaged, 18 or something like that at Wake Forest last year. He's a shooter. Yeah. Get out there and shoot, man. He's doing all the other stuff. Yeah. He's still playing good D and, contributing that way. But, he took that first three from the corner and airballed it, and then he just kind of went, well, I'm not shooting this thing anymore. And it was just nothing but handoffs and passes. Like, he wasn't interested in looking at the basket at all after that.
Okay, so we know some of the descriptors on why Illinois won last night. They defended incredibly well, especially Franz Wagner on kind of open flow kind of situations. They stopped the ball, they got ahead of him. He never had that swimming lane, if you will, up the floor like he has had, where he can take it, the final 40 feet to the hoop. Okay, so if Michigan plays Illinois, what if they, if they play them, let's just say they play them a week from Sunday in the Big Ten tournament. What are they going to have to do to beat them? If you could, with your high level of basketball expertise, what are the things that they're going to have to do that they didn't do last night?
You got to come out and out physical. You got to come out and punch them in the mouth right away. Because Michigan came out and got punched in the mouth and never responded. They were getting pushed. They were getting grabbed. You're talking about Franz in the open court. He was getting bumped the entire time, where normally he can get to half court and then he's kind of off and running. Well, he had guys running into him, running past him. He got to the bucket a couple times and he's getting bumped and hit. And he's kind of looking at the referees like, where's the foul? No, man, come on, play on. It's the Big Ten. Yeah. And, there was a lot of instances from, 1 through 8 that played where they're looking for calls and they weren't as physical as they should have been. And then, when Hunter Dickinson picked up his third foul, right after Kofi Cockburn picked up his third, Hunter's trying to be real aggressive and stuff like that. A 2-hand shove right in the guy's back on the offensive rebound. And then he looks over at the referee like, what'd I do? Like, man, come on. You got to be smarter than that. You have to know when to be physical and when not to be physical. It's kind of like what, Izzo used to do with all of his teams for the last 20 years. Be physical on every play because they can't call every foul. Don't pick and choose when you want to be physical. And I think that's one of the things they're going to face tomorrow with this Michigan State team is Izzo's going to be like, man, we can be spoilers, and these guys aren't tough. Look at how they responded. They got punched in the mouth, and they didn't respond. They backed down. So Izzo's going to have his guys ready. They're going to be as physical as they can possibly be. They're going to make the referees make calls. And if you get a crew that swallows their whistle, I hope Michigan's ready to step up.
Who is Michigan's toughest guy, physical guy in that team, do you think?
Oh, man.
Who can lead by example and stir the pot and motivate the others?
I think it's got to be Isaiah Livers. I think he's the guy because he's got the physical body to do it, plus he's outspoken enough to do it. All the guys are tough. Eli Brooks is as tough as they come, but he's not going to go to the basket, get an and one, and turn around and scream and flex and do all that kind of stuff. He's just going to go to the free throw line and make his free throw. Franz does it a little bit too, but he also has the tendency to kind of go back into his shell also if he's getting pushed around and not getting calls. So I think it relies a lot on Livers, and then it's the other guys feeding off it. And then, we've been saying a lot about how active and involved the Michigan bench has been. And yeah, they were clapping and they were up and, cheering a little bit, but they weren't doing what they were normally doing. They weren't jumping around and stuff like that. So it was the entire team that didn't match the energy and the physicalness that Illinois brought. And we need someone to step up. We need someone to just, tomorrow night, first play down, let's just go hit somebody. Just set a precedent right from the jump. Like, look, we're not the team you saw 48 hours ago.
You see, that's a great point because I noticed in the first, the Wisconsin game, I was trying to parallel the Wisconsin game in Madison, the time they played him. Oh, no, they played him twice. The second game in Madison, okay? Michigan goes down by 12 at halftime. And then that had been 14, and then Livers had a shot. Got down to 12. That bench, that half, when they were down, was what you wanted to see
last night.
last night, and you didn't see it.
Yep.
In fact, I probably weigh too much on this stuff. But but that spills over to the team. And I think
Mhm.
when you got there's about 8 minutes to go in the first half, the bench looked like they were checking out
Yep.
at times. And then
Mhm.
Illinois' bench, and granted, I mean when things go great,
Yeah, it's easy
it's
to cheer.
easy
Yeah.
to get all
Yep.
jazzed up. But yeah, it was, and there's no crowd.
But
No, we know
even
that.
Illinois managers, even the support staff that's all back behind the bench and stuff like that for Illinois, they were going crazy the entire time. And
Yeah,
the Michigan guys were doing that a little bit too. But even
right.
there was just a fatigue factor around the entire team that we haven't seen. That we all expected when they came back from the COVID pause for it to be a little bit like what we saw last night, where just everything's out of sync and everyone's kind of a little tired and not quite functioning quite right. And that's got to be done now. I mean, we can't have any more of those things if you want any chance of hanging banners and doing that kind of stuff.
Okay, so you have the championship on the line,
Yep.
where you can how can you not be ready to play?
Because you think you can just turn it on because you've been able to do that throughout the course of the entire season. You can just show up and things just work. And you could tell by
Okay.
some of the passes they were making early, trying to throw little float lob passes into Hunter Dickinson, and not really getting good angles to feed him the ball, and not really swinging and cutting hard and stuff like that. That they thought it was just going to happen, as opposed to making it happen. And if you try and
Right.
just cruise through a game against Michigan State, it doesn't matter what they're ranked or what type of players they've got. They're going to pound you. They're going to get after it. And this Michigan team has got to figure out a way to get that energy back. And it starts with the coaching staff. And I've actually put a lot of this on Martelli because he's been a head coach for so long. He's been in these situations. He's the one that's going to help Juwan and the rest of the staff figure out what the steps are to get that energy back, what they have to do.
All right. Last year, Michigan and Michigan State split. So I'm talking about the second game in Ann Arbor, and Michigan won it handily.
Mm-hmm.
The glaring thing about that game was, and I remember talking to Isaiah Livers about it after the game because he had just come off the injury. He had that injury last year, and he was coming off that injury.
Yep.
And it showed how vital he is because he is literally the orchestra leader on transition defense.
Mm-hmm.
And Michigan State, for as long as Tom Izzo's been there,
Mm-hmm.
they like to push the ball, and they'll push it off rebounds.
So they'll push out, makes, misses, made free throws.
It doesn't
insane.
matter what it is.
It doesn't matter.
Okay, so
Yeah.
he is. That's why besides for all the other things that he does,
Mm-hmm.
he's got to play tomorrow because
Yep.
he literally is that orchestra leader in transition D, which is the key for Michigan to beat Michigan State. Now, some teams aren't as vulnerable to Michigan State's transition as they pushing it. Michigan, whenever they've lost badly to Michigan State, it's been because of that.
Yeah.
They haven't transitioned their defense back, and that's what I'm concerned about tomorrow night.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference between this team and teams in the past as far as their transition D is that we don't really send, our 3 and our 4 to the offensive glass. Hunter Dickinson's down there trying to get offensive rebounds, but we don't crash anybody else. We transition at least 2 to 3 guys to rotate back for defensive transition. So I think that's going to be a big factor. And then it's Hunter Dickinson, and then if it's Wagner or whoever, to bust their butt to get back, because Michigan State's going to be pushing it. They're going to try and run because that's when they're the best. That's when they're able to keep pace with the top 25 teams, is when they're out running in transition. Their half court sets are okay. Their one-on-one game is okay, but they want to get in transition. They want to try and beat you up and down because they think they're better athletes. They think they're in better condition, that they can get up and down on you. And it doesn't matter if it's on a make, on a miss, on a free throw, or whatever the situation is. They just want to go.
And their perimeter shooting. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking Gabe Brown. I'm talking Josh Langford.
Mm-hmm.
Joey Hauser.
Mm-hmm.
They're better off the fast break, the secondary break, than they are in the half court. I think their half court kind of sucks, to be honest with you, Chris. I really think it does.
I totally agree. There's much better in the primary break and then the secondary break, meaning they don't get anything off their initial push. They bring it back out and get a couple swings and then a shot. when they
Yeah.
bring it back out and Henry puts a ball under his arm and he's a point guard and he's pointing and doing this and doing that, their offenses really aren't that good. They're not that efficient. They're much better in flux and on the move when they could maybe catch a guy off balance or catch someone who blew a rotation or something like that, where they got a chance to attack the basket or they got a chance to take an open shot.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now and we're going to wrap this up, and then we're going to be back here again if you're available.
I'm available.
A couple times coming up here.
Yep.
Maybe Friday and Monday and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to get your prediction, not of Sunday's game because we'll talk before then.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow night's game. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, same thing I said to Jamie Morris earlier on TKA. I predict a sweep.
Oh, you do? Okay.
I predict a sweep. I predict that we're going to win both of these games. And the reason I predict that is because then everything is in our control. If we split with Michigan State and Illinois wins, then it's talking about, tenths of a percentage point of who's got the better record. And, Illinois' coach can chime in and say, oh, well, Michigan ducked 3 games because of COVID and blah, 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 and they're not the real champions. We win these 2, they can't say anything.
Yeah.
And it's totally
the Big Ten did announce yesterday, I think that I think if Michigan wins 1, I mean they're gonna be the Big Ten champions. But you're right. You want to you don't want to give Underwood any ammunition to put the asterisks and all that stuff.
Exactly.
You just don't want. You want to a sweep Michigan State, which let's be real, Michigan State right now is a pretty good basketball team.
Mm-hmm.
That's a team that you don't want to play in that first weekend, that second game. That's going to be a 7 or 8, and they're going to knock somebody's off their quiche. You watch.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, and that's how every Big Ten team is.
Yeah.
If I'm around the country right now and I'm looking at, Andy Katz came out with his brackets and stuff like that, and I'm looking at, oh man, we got to play Purdue in the first round, or we got to play, potentially play Illinois in the second round or something like that. I don't want to play any team from the Big Ten. Every team in the Big Ten is so battle tested that it doesn't matter who they're going to play. They're going to knock off some big name teams. The Big Ten is going to have I think, a tremendous run coming into the tournament, just because every night it's a battle. It's a war. They're tested. It's been March Madness for the last 2 months in the Big Ten, where there's no nights off. It's lose and go home. It's, all those analogies.
Well, I hope to hell you're right. As you told Jamie Morris on TKA today, that you were going to get sweep. So I'm going to hold you to that. So you better deliver for me, my friend.
Hey, I'll do what I can. I will do what I can.
We'll check in with you on Friday, then see why. Have a good night and go blue.
Go blue.